And so I guess the next level of this question, where it gets a lot more controversial, is, and we can maybe pick this up next time, is whether, because there are perfectly, I guess, humanly respectable non-rational religions. Buddhism, for example, is a religion fundamentally built on self-contradictory ideas, or almost ideas beyond the rational. But Buddhists are legendary for being consistent with their sort of ethereal tenets of compassion and kindness and harmony with nature. And so I don't think anyone would argue that Buddhism has, affects people in the way that Nazism or liquor does. But they do all share in common that fundamental non-rationality. So do we think that something like Buddhism, or modern, I guess you could call it scientism, that's trying as hard as it can to eschew even the hint of a divine origin for the universe and replace it with something purely irrational, like a multiverse or a perpetual steady state universe? Like, are we saying these are in the same category, or are they different enough from an extremist ideology or self-destructive physical substances to be in a different category?
I would see the divergence from reality as being a bit different, because I see one is the divergence from reality being a personal lack that one's trying to fulfill, and I think the other is perhaps a philosophical lack that one's trying to fulfill, and you're diverging at different places along the path.
So you're saying things like Buddhism are a philosophical lack?
Yeah, because Buddhism is weird itself because it's a life philosophy, not necessarily religion, though it has religious elements, but it's very strange. But I think that's a bit different than someone, going out and drinking every night because they are, feeling as though they're missing some essential ingredient.
Okay. So we would say that if you're practicing Buddhism, you wouldn't be, quote unquote, throwing your mind away in the same way that you would with liquor or an extremist ideology.
No, I just think you're maybe very sincerely being misled into a falsehood.
Okay, and I actually didn't really have an answer to this in my mind going into it. It's just kind of a thought train that I had developed. It's okay, interesting, and I think I would agree, because Christ says you can know them by their fruit, and in some way, obviously, you could say the doctrinal fruit of Buddhism is thoroughly anti-Christian, almost as anti-Christian as you could possibly be, since it's both kind of like functionally polytheistic, but also fundamentally non-rational and undermining every core tenet of the Christian faith. So in that sense, it's bad fruit, but then it seems to, humanly speaking, produce so much good fruit. So, okay, I think I could go along with that more or less, that it's certainly something I would argue is leading people away from the gospel, but it's not necessarily like bringing the gospel to so what we're saying, bringing the gospel to the Buddhist is a fundamentally different experience from bringing it to a drug addict or someone trapped in an extremist political ideology.
Yeah.
Like, the Buddhists can still reason, and they do reason. Maybe if the reason is flawed, but it's still functional.
You can still present them with arguments that flow.
Yeah.
Naturally. Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. I think that's a good place to end on. And because then you can reckon, and next time we actually then have to get to the original question of of how then do you do apologetics in these non-rational situations. And we can kind of go down our list of 3 one by one, between addicts, extremists, and non-rational religionists, because those are 3 separate categories with certain striking things in common, I would say, that aren't determinative. So, okay, any last thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, until next time then, this is Eric the Pen Guy.
This is Alex Burks.
And this has been Pen Guy Podcasting.